Your station, 101 FM, with Saturday Sports Scene.
Good morning and welcome to Sports Scene for another week. Kevin Braysher here with you as always, taking you through all the big issues in sport from the local scene all the way up to the internationals. Joining me at the panel this morning, AFL Queensland Hall of Famer, Mr. Craig Crowley. Craig, welcome to the show once again.
Go you Lions!
Yes.
We've had a win!
First time in 10 years the Lions have come home with some silverware.
Yeah, look, it was tremendous, wasn't it? And look, I think they showed a lot at the end of last year, and now they're gone forward again. So they've recruited well. All good.
Definitely is a terrific start to the season for the Queenslanders.
By the way,
hello. Good morning, Craig. As I say, terrific night for the Queenslanders all round. Ethan James from the QRL joins us. The Brisbane Broncos bounced back with a win last night. Mate, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me again. I'm just as happy as Craig.
Yippee!
Smiles all around. Yeah, the Bronx did well last night. I thought the attitude in defence was a lot better than last week, so promising signs.
A lot better. It was, something for Broncos fans to be much happier about. Also joining us, Mr. Darren Madigan. Darren, the founding father of Sports Scene. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, everybody. And in the spirit of the NRL, I just want to warn everybody that during the course of the program, I'll be popping up periodically and letting you know the odds of, all sorts of things during the program, whether Craig's going to spit the dummy at some stage in the second half hour, whether I'm going to throw my toys out of the cot at some stage in the second hour, and we'll offer really good odds for that. You can go to darrenmadigan.com and I'll take all good credit cards.
What are the odds on a text message coming back that counts as one of your opinions, Darren?
I think if it's anything like last week, it should be pretty good. I reckon around about $1.10.
All right, I think those are good odds. If you want to text us and get in contact with us on the show here, it's 0429 506 704. That's 0429 506 704. If you want to get in contact with us on social media, we are on Facebook and YouTube. That's facebook.com, youtube.com/sportscene, SportzScene, SportzScene. Let's get on with all the results from the last day or so here on Sports Scene. In the NRL, as we say, the Brisbane Broncos 22-6 over the Dragons at WIN Stadium last night. In a game where the Dragons dominated possession and field position, the Broncos essentially tackled their way to victory. It was a very heartening performance if you're a Broncos supporter. We'll talk about all the NRL in the next section of the show. And on Thursday night, the Bulldogs getting up 20-16 over the Eels. It was the same score at full-time as it was at half-time. But the Bulldogs, again, without a lot of their star players, without a lot of their strike power, but showed that they're a very tough, gritty side and got home with a good win there under a lot of pressure. In the NAB Cup, the Brisbane Lions getting home 109-69 over the Carlton Blues. As we said at the top of the show, Craig, their first piece of silverware in 10 years. A good win for the Lions. Just something that's been a bit of a talking point with them is why this game wasn't played in Queensland. It was played down in Victoria. And as you said, the Lions didn't get any home games throughout the NAB Cup.
No, they didn't. Look, I suppose it's all about bottoms on seats, I suppose, and Eddie had probably going to facilitate a lot more people going to the ground. I don't think the Gabba was available because of the cricket still being on, so they would have had to play the Metricon. How would they have supported it down here? Probably, and how many people would have travelled? Look, and as I said to you guys earlier, it's not a bad thing to be travelling away and winning. To win away from home is a good thing, and going into the season proper, it probably won't hurt them to take on the Victorian sides down there.
Yep, fair enough. In the cricket overnight, we finally got play. The first day was rained out in the third test over in India. But Australia, they got underway 7 for 273 at stumps. Ed Cowan and David Warner had a record-breaking first wicket stand for 139 for 1 in India. But unfortunately, Michael Clark moving up to number 3 after everyone's been begging him for so long. Golden Duck, everyone except you, Craig. I will point out, you said leave him at 5. That's where he's scoring his runs. Craig Crowley on top of things here. But Australia, a decent performance, I think. It started well, but India really fought back, and 7 for 273 at the end of day 2 there. We'll talk about all the cricket in the start of the second hour of the show. It's been obviously a very, very big week with 4 players stood down for disciplinary reasons. We'll talk all about that. In the Super Rugby overnight, the Cheetahs 27 over the Waratahs 26 at Allianz Stadium. The Waratahs, they had a penalty late in the game. They had a chance to go for the try. They went for the 3 to make it 1 point, and they didn't get another scoring chance. So maybe a lesson there. Maybe they should have gone for it. But that's something they'll think about in the weeks and months to come. If it's tight later in the season, the Hurricanes get up in another tight one over the Highlanders at Dunedin, 23-19, and the Chiefs 35-24 over at Nelson Mandela Bay Stadium over the Southern Kings. The Southern Kings showed plenty of fight, but as is pretty much the norm, the Chiefs too many points in them. Darren, the F1's getting underway this weekend. Sebastian Vettel at the top of the practice sheets.
Certainly is, and Mark Webber sitting there just behind him in second place. Red Bull looked pretty good yesterday, needless to say, but so did Lewis Hamilton there for a while as well, until an interesting thing towards the end of the session, he was off the track, and they were saying that it looked like possible the car radio was saying gearbox, but the commentators seemed to think it was brakes, and the telltale signs on the track looked like brakes as well. But at the moment, Red Bull looking good. Mercedes were looking quick, but they did take their other car off the track in Rosberg just to be safe. And the 2 latest Renaults in Kimi Räikkönen and Romain Grosjean looking good. But today is all about qualifying, and actually qualifying will start just as we go off the air at 10 o'clock. So it's all looking very interesting. Mark Webber, if he can hold it together and puts in a good qualifying performance, you never know what could happen. We could finally get an Australian win the Australian Grand Prix. So
wouldn't that be
fingers
great?
Crossed.
We got all the motorsport talk will happen at 9:30 in the second hour of the show. We'll get Lee Hanatschek on the phone to talk that through with us. In the A-League last night, Adelaide and Newcastle played out a 1-1 draw. In the NBL, the Breakers 114 over Melbourne 84. The New Zealand Breakers now 16 straight. We should start the show every week and say who have the Breakers beaten this week, because they're just unbeatable. 16 straight. Tom Abercrombie again, 24 points, very, very strong. The Cairns Taipans get up in a close one over the Adelaide 36ers, 76-73, and the Wollongong Hawks 81-74 over the Sydney Kings. Taking a quick look at the ladder, no surprise, the New Zealand Breakers way out on top of the ladder. We got Perth in second, Wollongong third, the Cairns in fourth, Sydney, Melbourne, Townsville, and Adelaide bringing up the rest of the ladder there. Darren, what's been happening in the world of tennis and golf of late? I know Rafa Nadal had a big win over Roger Federer.
Yeah, massive tournament. This, as we know, it's the most attended tournament outside of the 4 Grand Slams. It is Indian Wells in Southern California. Roger Federer beat Nadal Roger Federer went down to Nadal 6-4, 6-2. Great press conference afterwards. Federer gave credit where credit was due, but he also has a bit of a back injury, so we'll keep an eye on that over the next few weeks and see if it's going to affect him coming into things like the French Open and that, especially the clay court season coming up. Thomas Berdych defeated Kevin Anderson in the other quarterfinal, 6-4, 6-4 in the bottom half of the draw. That means the 2 semi-finalists there will be Nadal and Thomas Berdych. And in the top half of the draw, Andy Murray to play Del Potro. And I can tell you, Djokovic has beaten Tsonga 3-1, I think it was, in the quarterfinal there. So that one's been decided. Just Andy Murray and Del Potro there to come. On the women's half side of the draw, we've got Kerber to play Wozniacki in one semi-final, and in the other, Maria Sharapova to play Maria Kirilenko, who beat Petra Kvitova in 3 sets there. So that's what's happening as far as the tennis is concerned. As far as the golf is going, I'm just trying to bring up the old... Yep. All right, the old computer doesn't want to play the game. There are 2 tournaments being played at the moment. I can tell you Adam Scott is actually tied for second in the men's tournament. And I'll bring you up to date on the scores in both of those when my computer decides it wants to play the game.
We'll get them up later on in the show. Speaking of later on in the show, we're going to get Michael Hillier from the QRL on at 8:30 to talk about the first round of the Intrust Super Cup, which gets underway this week, as we say. Lee Hanatschek will be on the phone at 9:30 to talk motorsport, and Darren will go through all the netball at 9:15 as well. But first of all, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk all things rugby league, and there's plenty happening as always.
If you want the latest and best movies on the big screen, plus a delicious morning tea, all for a very low admission price, then you must come along to the 101 FM monthly movies at station sponsor, the Hyperplex Cinemas Loganholme. Keep listening for details of the next screening and then join us, Logan City's 101 FM.
A perfect way to complete your weekend. Sunday nights at 8, join us for Popular Classics on 101 FM.
101 FM.
You're listening to Saturday Sports Scene on your station, 101 FM.
Yes, welcome back to the show here. Sports Scene on 101 FM. It's 15 minutes past 8. Kevin Braysher, Craig Crowley, Ethan James and Darren Madigan with you, talking through all the big issues in sport. It's time to talk some rugby league now. Last night, the Brisbane Broncos, 22-6 over the Dragons. I've got to say, Ethan, last week, I was at the game and travelled to and from with public transport. And one of the great things with public transport is you sort of get a read on what other people are thinking about, because you hear, walking between places, you hear the rest. Walking out of that Broncos game last week, a lot of really disheartened Broncos fans are like, I don't think we're going to make the 8 this year. I think last night would have restored a lot of faith. And, if nothing else, it was a typically Queensland performance in the fact that they were under a lot of pressure. It was 60% possession against them in the first half, and the Broncos just kept turning up, found a way to win last night, and ended up comfortable winners 22-6.
Yeah, I think their attitude in defence in particular was a complete sort of 180 from the week before. They had to do a lot of defence there in the first half in particular. The possession was heavily against them, and they still managed to go into half-time at 6-all, which I think was a really good effort. Mm-hmm. There's still areas of improvement in their game. Of course, it is only round 2. But yeah, we had a chat off about the Dragons as well. How do you think they're sort of placed? Because their attack wasn't throwing a great deal at Brisbane.
See, that's the thing, wasn't it? They dominated field position, they dominated possession, but never really looked greatly threatening. And a lot of time, like the commentator said during the show, it looked like a tackling drill a lot of the time, and it did. And they just kept throwing the same plays at them, the same thing. So, I don't know, the Dragons need something to spark their attack. But, the commitment and defence is always there and all the rest of it. That can only take you so far if you're not scoring points. So, I think the Dragons need to turn that around quickly, otherwise they're in for a bit of a tough year. The Broncos lost a couple of guys to injury. Josh Maguire went down. Justin Hodges went down. They'll have to keep an eye on those guys. Hopefully they're not too seriously hurt, because both of them, I thought, were playing pretty well before they went off, despite Hodges going to the bin. He looked strong. Just the last thing I want to talk about with the Broncos game before we move on, lots of other things to talk about. There was a real backline reshuffle at one stage during the game, which I thought was interesting, and I quite liked the idea of.
Yeah, they didn't go into the match with a replacement dummy half on the bench, so essentially they shuffled Peter Wallace from halfback to hooker, and then moved Corey Norman into the halves from fullback, and then put Justin Hodges at fullback. So it was something I've never really seen before, to shuffle that many playmakers around mid-match. But I think it looked good, because Hodges at fullback, he gets a lot more open space, and if he can play sort of short, sharp bursts at fullback and inject himself every now and then, I think that could be a real sort of plus for the Bronx.
Yeah,
of course, he got sin-binned halfway through, so it put a bit of a spanner in the works.
Which was unfortunate, because he was playing very well. I agree. I think, if they have Norman there for the structure sort of play, and then they have Hodges go back there for, short bursts or whatever to have some impact, I quite like it. I think we could see some success there with it. So keep an eye on that. Broncos, much better performance from them, and I think Broncos supporters will take a lot out of that one. The other game played so far this week, the Bulldogs 20 over the Eels 16. No tries in the second half after 7 tries were scored in the first half, but I think the Bulldogs, as I said at the top of the show, without their star players, they're still going to be a tough side to beat. Probably won't have the strike power, but they're a very well-drilled, well-coached side that will be gritty, and they'll be tough to beat, regardless of who isn't in that side. But can they keep winning games against top sides without those strike players there? I question that.
Yeah, they'll always be tough defensively, but whether or not they have that strike power to really sort of blast through the defence of, say, someone like Melbourne remains to be seen. But I thought Parramatta can take a lot out of that performance as well, considering how they went last year. The amount of improvement that they've shown in those 2 matches so far this season, I reckon there's a lot of upsides for Eels fans.
Absolutely, a lot of upside for them, and it'll take time to see whether they can keep the intensity throughout the year, but they've looked very good so far. Chris Sando, I think in particular, probably the guy with the most improvement so far. He's looked terrific. Move on to the rest of the round now. The big one this week, one I'm really looking forward to, the Cowboys up against the Storm up at 1300 Smiles Stadium, as it's known now. That'll be 5:30 Queensland time up there in North Queensland. The big news, of course, Jonathan Thurston has re-signed with the Cowboys, $5 million deal over 4 years. Reportedly, he had much bigger offers in Sydney, but decided to stay. I think pretty much everybody's going to be happy with that, because no matter what, I think Jonathan Thurston is a Cowboy, and that's how people think of him. And it's a huge coup to get him for another 4 years. And they've really built a side there now. They've re-signed Matt Scott. They've re-signed Matt Tarmo. James Thomas, rather. And Jonathan Thurston's there. I think they're really eyeing off a premiership in those next couple of years of the Cowboys. They'll be in party mode with Jonathan Thurston there.
Yeah, the handcuffs worked, and I'm very, very happy about that. But in all seriousness, it was good to see the coach signed up as well once his players were all signed, sealed and delivered. And look, Cooper Cronk, Jonathan Thurston, wow, how big is this match going to be?
It's a big one. And the thing I love about it is two contrasting styles, because the Melbourne Storm are so structured and so methodical in the way they play, and they've got so much success from it. The Cowboys have got some of that in their forward pack, but then they've got the best off-the-cuff player in the game in Jonathan Thurston there. Ethan, how do you see this one going down?
Yeah, I'm sort of liking the Cowboys in this one. The Storm have had to travel around a fair bit since they've come back from England, of course, with the World Club Challenge. Mm-hmm. They've then played on the Central Coast in New South Wales. They would have had to go back home to Melbourne and now back up to Townsville. So they've been sort of all over the place a little bit. So I'm liking the Cowboys on their home turf.
I lean towards the Cowboys as well. I think it's going to be a great game of football, and I think it's probably a preview for games we're going to see much later in the season in semi-finals time as well. I think they'll both be very good, but I'll tip the Cowboys. One last thing on this subject before we move on. Matthew Johns threw up an interesting little thing during the week. He basically said that he thinks in 10 years' time, people will remember Jonathan Thurston as the best halfback, not his brother, recently named immortal Andrew Johns. Ethan, I mean, I've made similar cases in the last year on the show. What do you think? Will we be talking about Jonathan Thurston as an immortal, quote unquote, in 10 years' time?
Was he tongue in cheek or was he being?
No, he wrote a whole full column about it. Yep.
I reckon Thurston's up there for sure. I mean, in terms of the amount of matches that he's played for Queensland and the influence that he's had at State of Origin level and Australian level. And if he can sort of help guide the Cowboys towards a premiership in the next few years, then most definitely.
Kevin?
Yes, Darren, before we move on with that, I just want to say, look, I think the one thing with Thurston he needs is that premiership with the Cowboys, and then he can really there's some real competition there, because I think he's a brilliant player. Yes, Darren?
Would it be questioned if he was wearing a blue jumper?
It's an interesting question, Darren.
I also think, Darren, too, and very quickly, his persona, what he portrays, Jonathan Thurston, nice and clean, he's ambassador to the game. What Andrew Johns unfortunately did still sits in the back of a lot of people's mind. He was a great player. They're as good as each other, but what Jonathan Thurston, he's nice and homely, he's a family, just everything about him, it just pushes him in that direction, doesn't it?
It does. And the thing, Thurston's a multiple Dally M winner, as was Johns. Jonathan Thurston has done some things that Johns hasn't. In fact, he's led Queensland to 7 straight. He's played in every single one of those games. The one thing that Johns has got over Thurston is those premierships. So I think that's what Thurston needs, and I think that's a big part of why he stayed at the Cowboys, because it is on offer. You're listening to SportzScene here on 101 FM. 22 minutes past 8. Kevin Braysher, Craig Crowley, Ethan James, and Darren Madigan with you. We moved to two teams that lost one last week over at Eden Park. The Warriors against the Roosters, and boy, how bad were the Warriors last week? They were unbelievable. Honestly, they were so bad.
Yeah, I saw them play a trial on the coast against the Titans, and they played footy for about 10 minutes, and they were asleep for about 70.
Right.
And I don't think they've woken up either, so I don't know what's going on across the Tasman.
But here's the drop of form. How many years ago they played in the grand final, and from that moment on, it just went bang. It just went no honeymoon period where they finished in the 8 or wherever. They just went
They went from
bang.
great to terrible. And you know what? That coincided with the loss of Ivan Cleary. There's been several players follow him over to the Panthers. I think it shows he was a very popular figure at that club, and they just haven't responded. But it wasn't just even that they were terrible. They just didn't seem interested half the time. Their defence didn't move up. And I was saying towards the end of last year, and I forgot this last week when I was doing tips, because I did tip the Warriors, that I wouldn't tip the Warriors again until they won a game. I said that. They lost 8 straight, and I said it for about the last 6 weeks of the competition. I'm not tipping them until they win. I'm going back to it. I can't tip them until they win. They'll probably win this week because I just said that. Sonny Bill Williams will start for the Roosters, which is probably the big talking point there. I think he'll probably go well. I thought he started strong last week and will only get better. Titans versus the Raiders. This is an interesting one. We've got to talk about the controversy with the Raiders this week. Star fullback Josh Dugan has been sacked. Blake Ferguson, outside back, has also been stood down and fined $10,000. Craig, I'll go to you with this one, because this was stunning story to me. What happened with this was Dugan and Blake Ferguson skipped out on the recovery session. Not only did they skip out, they sat on Josh Dugan's roof, on a couch on Josh Dugan's roof, drinking beers, or not beers, or drinking pineapple cruises. Pineapple cruises, or getting drunk on the thing. Not only that, but they take a photo of themselves on the roof, post it to Instagram, so they post themselves doing this. Dave Ferner, the coach, leaves the recovery session to go and find them, and he talks to them on the roof. Ferner's on the ground. Imagine that picture. The coach has come all the way to his house, the players are on the roof, he's on the ground, telling them, you coming or what? And they said, no, we're not going anywhere. And they stayed there, and off he went. Now they've been sacked. They had no choice, did they? I've never heard of...
Oh, it's a no-brainer.
It's a no-brainer. It was a no-brainer. Like, as we said during the week, like, people have sort of scandals like this, they try to sweep it under the rug. These guys put it out there themselves. To me, this says... It's not a mistake on their part. It was a choice, a deliberate choice.
Exactly. And, probably the biggest and the most disappointing thing, obviously these are very talented footballers, right?
Both of them.
The fact of the matter is you have people trialling, giving everything, will do anything for a game, and these guys hold it in contempt, really, don't they? Mm-hmm. They don't want to, they're in, it's just, it was phenomenal when you saw the photos, and when you hear about the coach going, like... As soon as I wouldn't have even got, if I was in that situation as coach, I wouldn't have even got into discussion. Yeah. I would have looked at him at the roof and gone, I'll see you later.
Yeah.
And that would have been the end of it, because he's taken the mickey out of the whole club, the whole sport.
And I think the bottom line, a lot of them, the reports are that he's lost the trust of the playing group. Before this, it was already gone. A lot of the guys didn't trust him anymore, and fair enough. I think both parties will be better off because of this. Dugan will probably do a Todd Carney, go to another club and win a Dalian medal, because he's got the talent to do it. He clearly just didn't want to be at that club and had attitude problems.
If I was a coach of any other side and you say, I'm coach of Brisbane, and I'm showing interest to go north, I would not even deal with it. That is just remarkable. No remorse, nothing, didn't hide. Yeah. If he's going to do this once, he will not change. He'll do it again, and I reckon his football career's finished.
Would you want to pick him up?
No, that's the next question, isn't it?
Yeah.
It would have to put
I was going to say, like Todd Carney came up here to the Atherton Roosters. The only problem's going to be when they all find out he was on a pineapple cruise, and nobody's going to want to know.
Exactly right. Like Todd Carney was pouring beers up there at Atherton, wasn't he? Like, they're not going to want. He'll be serving pineapple cruises, something like that. I don't know. But anyway, the game itself, the Titans, the Raiders. I thought the Titans weren't bad at all against the Sharks last week. I think they'll turn it on at home. I thought Albert Kelly, was quite impressive there. They got a good forward pack. I quite like the Titans in that game. I'll tip them at home. What do you think, Ethan?
Do you think the Canberra Raiders can push through a bit of controversy?
Well, that's the thing. They got Reece Robertson moves to fullback. Edric Lee comes into the side.
And they played some brilliant footy with Robertson at fullback last year. Pretty much was one of the players who sort of helped them get into the top 8.
Absolutely.
So I don't know. I wouldn't write off Canberra here. I'm guessing the blokes who are still there would want to prove to one another that they're all focused, as a team and on the job at hand. So I wouldn't write off Canberra here.
No, fair enough. The Tigers up against the Panthers. The Tigers are a team I am going to write off because they were deplorable last week as well. Well, not so much. They were more completely and utterly dominated by the Knights. I took that back for a second. They weren't as bad as the Warriors, put it that way.
I was going to say, who would you tip in a game between the Warriors and the Tigers?
Tigers, mate, at this stage. But yeah, the Tigers, they got thumped by the Knights last week. They were never in it, bottom line. The Panthers weren't bad against the Raiders. I'm going to keep calling them the Moneyball team for anyone who's seen that movie. Take a bunch of the outcast sort of players from other clubs, put them all together and get a side. They looked all right, the Panthers, not bad. I think they're going to surprise a lot of teams this year. I'll tip the Panthers for sure there.
Yeah, I'm not overly keen to work in betting odds to the program, but apparently the Tigers are pretty heavy favourites going to this one, which is sort of surprising.
Surprising?
Well, exceptionally surprising, really.
They got beaten by 42-10 last week and were never in it. Yeah. Although the Tigers were premiership favourites last year, which I could never understand, to be frank. Anyway, move on to the Sea Eagles versus the Knights. That's at Brookvale Oval Sunday night. This will be a good game of football. I'll tip Sea Eagles at Fortress Brookvale, but what do you think, mate? Both teams looked very impressive last week.
Yeah, it'll be a bruising one there. The two forward packs, especially considering how the Knights, as we spoke about just a second ago, just absolutely rolled through the Tigers last week. So it should be a few good clashes in there, like personnel-wise, like Anthony Watmough and Jeremy Smith come together in the back row and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, Manly at home at Brookvale, always tough. Yeah, I think smart money's usually on Manly at Brookvale there. But yeah, that was the biggest difference between the Knights this year and the Knights last year. Is boy, they looked a lot tougher through the middle, didn't they? They looked really strong. Final game of the weekend, Monday Night Football. The Rabbitohs up against the Sharks. The Sharks pulling off an emotional 2-point win over the Titans last week.
the obvious question, can they back it up again this week against who were arguably the most impressive side last week, the Rabbitohs?
I don't think they can. They had that massive emotional wave and they put everything into that match last weekend in front of their home crowd. I don't think they can back it up. So I'm thinking the Rabbitohs will get home pretty comfortable.
I'll have to agree with you there on that one. Like, they really did put everything into that, and the Rabbitohs look very strong. They'll be without Sam Burgess, who was on a one-game suspension, but that forward pack still looks pretty fierce if you have a look through the Rabbitohs. They're a very, very strong side this year. That wraps up all the NRL talk for this week. We'll go to a break now. When we come back, we'll get Michael Hillier on the phone from the QRL, and we'll talk the first round of the Intrust Super Cups. So stay with us.
Did you know that all dogs and cats in Logan City must be registered with council once they are over the age of 12 weeks? Additionally, the new local law now requires all cats to be desexed, excluding approved breeders. Remember that all cats, just like dogs, must be kept contained to your property, and both are required to wear their registration tags. Registered dogs and cats that are impounded for the first time may be returned to you free of charge if they are already desexed and microchipped.
How was it, Mum? No one looks forward to a mammogram, but it's only uncomfortable for a few seconds. And finding and treating breast cancer before it spreads gives you your best chance of being around for those who need you. If you're 50 or over, call BreastScreen today, 13 20 50.
Life. Life is for living, so live it. Life. Life is for giving, so give it. Giving blood is cool, needing it isn't. Red Cross. Give a little. Life is for living. Life is for giving. Help save lives. Please give blood.
Do you have a street light that's not functioning correctly outside your property? Perhaps you've noticed a floodlight over a zebra crossing that's not operating. Well, Energex would like you to report it to them by calling 13 12 53 or completing an online form for faulty streetlights on their website at energex.com.au. Remember also that the council has to pay the running cost of all the streetlights, whether they're working or not. So let's get the most for our rateable dollar by reporting the streetlights not functioning to Energex on 13 12 53 or on their website energex.com.au.
We play the biggest hits and the greatest memories. Logan City's 101 FM.
And now it's back to Saturday Sports Scene on 101 FM.
Yes, welcome back to Sports Scene here on 101 FM. It's 32 minutes past 8. Your next fresh news update coming up at the top of the hour at 9 o'clock. It's Kevin Braysher, Craig Crowley, Ethan James and Darren Madigan with you. And joining us on the line from the QRL, Mr. Michael Hillier. Michael, welcome to the show again.
Morning, guys.
Hi, Michael.
Morning, mate. It's been a big week for the Intrust Super Cup, but the first thing I've got to ask you about is some bad news during the week with Graham Murray, the Wynnum Manly coach, going down with a suspected heart attack. Is he going okay?
Yeah, from all reports from the Wynnum Manly CEO, Scott Thornton, he's doing a lot better. He's still in the intensive care unit in Brisbane at the PA, but apparently his conditions have improved a little bit, which is great news.
Definitely, but we wouldn't expect him to be there for the blockbuster on Sunday, would we?
Nah, definitely not, mate. It could really throw a bit of a hiccup Wynnum's way. I mean, he may not be there for the rest of the year, really. I mean, his health is the priority, and so I think at this stage, the football's a further thing from his mind, and obviously the Wynnum CEO, they've been great about it. They've basically said that, we've got the assistant coach there, and I'm not sure who that is, by the way, but they've got their coaching staff that's already in place there. And actually, there's Adam Bridesing used to play for the Bulldogs, and he's been around the traps a lot and coaches the Cold side, so I've heard his name mentioned as a possible guy who could take the reins while Graham recovers.
That's it. And Graham was the new coach to the club this year as well, wasn't he?
Yeah, that's correct. He big shoes to fill. He replaces Paul Green, who led Wynnum to back-to-back Intrust Super Cup premierships. So Muzz has been away at Newcastle, and he previously was with Wynnum as the CEO for a 12-month stint. So I know from talking to him that he was just really excited to be back coaching, so he'd obviously be pretty devastated that he can't do that at the moment.
That's it. Well, we wish Graham the best of health recovering from that heart attack. But for the QRL themselves, mate, the season launched this week. Everything seems to be building a lot of momentum towards the first round this weekend.
Yeah, for sure. Look, on the back of the Channel 9 coverage from last year, we really think the prestige of the competition and the promotion has really gone up a level, and the launch on Monday was a good success. We had over 200 people there at the Regatta Hotel. Not a bad place for a couple of beers, just quietly, but it went well, and had some good guest speakers. Yvonne Sanson from Channel 9 hosted the lunch, and we had plenty of sponsors there, and all the clubs are represented, so it went really well. Just a good positive start leading into this weekend.
Michael, Craig Crowley here, mates. With the obviously the launch and so forth, how much emphasis is going to be on Petro Civoniceva? Obviously, a great draw card, and the publicity around him has been absolutely sensational, the way you've marketed it. Expectations from Petro going back into the Intrust Super Cup. Sorry.
Yeah, mate. Look, good question. Look, he first of all, it's just amazing, like you said, the amount of exposure he's brought to the competition. Fair dinkum, he probably needs a full-time media manager himself. The request he's getting is unbelievable. He was on Channel 9 last night, Channel 10, 4BC wanted him. Big League Magazine, Rugby League Week, they're all chasing him, which is just great, the level of interest he's brought to it. At our launch on Monday, Johnny Dixon, the Redcliffe coach, was fantastic. He sort of outlined why Petro is coming back, and he really gave some great comments. And the simple thing he said was he recognises where he comes from in his background, and that's Redcliffe, and that's where he got his start. He last played for him in 1994. He played in the Colts Grand Final, I believe. Yep. And Petro, he's just a great believer in, where you come from and your heritage. And obviously this year as well, he wants to look at representing Fiji. So it's a bit of a twofold thing, back to Redcliffe where it began and possibly representing Fiji again. So he's just an amazing guy. And as John touched on as well at the launch, he's just such a humble bloke. And I've spent a bit more time with him this year, and he really is. He's probably the nicest bloke you'll ever meet, to be honest. So he's just a real genuine guy, and he'll just talk to anyone. So he's a credit to himself and the game of rugby league, really.
And it is tremendous what he's doing, and it's very interesting to say in all the adverts you've seen, it's putting things back into grassroots. The thing is, with this, Michael, do you see in the future, are you hoping to see, with the publicity you're giving, that a lot more players, when they finish their career at the NRL, go back to their grassroots, and are you going to follow that sort of promotional route?
Definitely, mate. Petro's big on this. He's actually put a submission through to John Grant and Dave Smith at the NRL and the Commission, the Australian Rugby League Commission. He's put together a bit of a proposal where he wants to see basically an incentive, or there's some financial things put around players who finish their NRL career, or guys who are young and signed on with an NRL club who don't quite make it, but they may be a bit embarrassed to go back to their local team or association. And he wants to sort of formalise it by, giving these guys an incentive to come back and play at a local level. Like you see what it's doing for Redcliffe. I know it's happened a little bit on the Gold Coast with you guys down there. Mm-hmm. With, Preston Campbell and Dean Witters and some different players like that who have got involved, and it really does boost the competition. So, hats off again to Petro, who's this sort of things happen from time to time in local footy in Queensland and New South Wales, but Petro's had the vision to put it on paper and really drive it. So, hopefully the Commission and the NRL take it on board, and there's going to be an official program in place where we're going to see more guys come back and play local footy or Intrust Super Cup or the level below.
Dead right, mate. We'll move to the footy now. We'll start with the big game on Sunday afternoon. It'll be live on Channel 9, 2 p.m. throughout Queensland. It is at Coogee Oval. The winner, Manly Seagulls, up against the Redcliffe Dolphins. Grand final rematch. Petro will captain the Dolphins this year. Ethan, I'll go to you on this one. How do you pick this one? They're two such evenly matched sides. Both of them is fielding a lot of players that were in that grand final last year.
Yeah, it'll be a huge match, of course, Petro being the big draw card there, but of course the grand final matchup will be out at Wynnum's home turf there at Coogee Oval, so they'll get a massive crowd. And there's a fair few sort of fringe Broncos players in both sides, but both sides are looking good. It should be a cracking game. Mick, what are your thoughts on what's sort of the hype around the match on Sunday?
Yeah, look, it's massive hype there. Like you you touched on there, plenty of fringe Broncos talent in both sides, really. Probably more so Redcliffe. Wynnum don't have their captain, Luke Dalziel-Don. He did his cruciate ligament in the grand final, and he hasn't been named. Barring a surprise, I don't think he's going to play, which to me sort of tips the scales towards Redcliffe a little bit, with Luke Capel there and obviously Petro. Their bench is massive. They've got Dave Huller from the Broncos, who's 130 kg, and Isaac Armour, who's been there and done that in the NRL off the bench. So, I just think if anyone gets near Redcliffe this year, it's... I shouldn't say that. Look, they lost the grand final last year. They are beatable, but, on paper, they've got a cracking side.
Absolutely right. We'll move to the other games on the Sunday for our Logan listeners. The South Logan Magpies up against Ethan, your mob, the East Tigers. That'll be at Davies Park, 3 p.m. tomorrow afternoon. The South Logan Magpies got
them down to specials there, having Ethan, the Tigers, mate.
Under the radar, Mick, under the radar.
That's it. I've exposed it now. For the South Logan side, they're one of the few clubs in the QRL that aren't affiliated with an NRL side. How much does that put them at a disadvantage?
It does a little bit. Of course, that they don't have the quality of player in terms of a full-time player who trains, with an NRL squad playing for them. But at the same time, I know, talking to some of the coaches in the Intrust Super Cup, that the players that are aligned with NRL clubs that sort of fly in, fly out, they don't spend too much time training with the side, and that is a bit of a balancing act and a juggling act for the coach. So I think they'll have a fairly settled sort of squad, which will be a benefit for them. And they've picked up a few handy sort of signings too. They've really bolstered their punch and strength in the forwards. And so I know East's definitely not taking them lightly on Sunday. I reckon it'll be a lot closer than perhaps a few people sort of think.
Fair enough there. Hopefully the South Logan side can improve on the efforts from last season. The other game on Sunday afternoon, another big local rivalry, this one, the Tweed Head Seagulls up against the Burleigh Bears. That's at Les Burger Field, which has been moved from Pigabeen because Pigabeen was probably still underwater from all the rain that they've copped there. That'll be 3 p.m. Queensland time down there at Les Burger Field. Plenty of ex-Titans on display here. I just want to give a shout-out to, there's a couple of Bycroft Cup players, but one in particular who's moved up the grades. Tyler Chadburn gets a start at fullback for the Bears. He's absolutely killed it the last couple of years in the Bycroft Cup, so he's still only about 19 years old, I think, as well. So keep an eye on him for that one, guys. What do we make of this one? Mick, big draw, this one. Always big contest between Tweed Heads and Burleigh, no matter where they are on the ladder.
Yeah, for sure, you're dead right. Look, this will be a massive game. Tweed, to me, are a little bit unknown. Like, they've got the Titans' influence there, and I've heard Luco Dwyer and Mum and Barber are going to slot back into that side as late changes as well. But new coach for Tweed, Aaron Zimmerly, unproven at this level, but by all reports is a good up-and-coming coach. Likewise, Burleigh having a new coach, Carl Briggs, who he took over late last year. But yeah, look, I like the look of that Burleigh side. There's the good raps on the fullback you just mentioned there. Their back line with Jordan Rankin, Anthony Don, Jamie Dowling, Steve Michaels, just to name a few, all sort of tied up with the Gold Coast Titans, and a very good forward pack as well. So, in all honesty, it's Burleigh have had a good look at themselves. They've gone with a lot of guys from the local league, and they're going to rely on those Titans players to filter back, but it's really a make or break season for them. Really, they've underachieved probably the last 4 or 5 years, and I think they're ready to do a bit better this year. One guy that you mentioned, Ethan, in your season preview stuff that's up on the QRL website is a guy called Anthony Don. He's on the wing for the Bears. Tell us a little bit about him.
Yeah, he's a Grafton junior, so he's travelled around a little bit to find a home at Burleigh. He is contracted with the Gold Coast Titans, so he's a member of their full-time squad, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, a big talent. He's a lanky, sort of tallish winger. Can definitely find the try line. The only issue for him sort of has been injuries in the past few seasons. He's struggled to sort of stay on the field. But yeah, he can definitely find his way to the try line. I think he could be someone who could push for a spot in the Gold Coast Titans back line if they sort of shuffle things around there a bit.
That's it. We'll push through the rest of the round now. We're running out of time for this segment already. The Ipswich Jets up against the North Devils up at North Ipswich Reserve. That is today. That's the season opener, 3 p.m. at North Ipswich. Who do we like in this one, Ethan?
The Jets are tough. They're always tough, but they have lost a few. They've lost their 5'8" Brendan Lindsay from last year, and I think they could perhaps... Well, they'll lose his experience, obviously, there. I'm liking the Jets there at home. Mick, you're out at Ipswich Way. What do you think?
Oh, look, the Jets have, like you said, they've lost a couple of good players there, and Brendan Lindsay, Lorenzo Marthu, he's one for your listeners to look out for. He's signed with Parramatta, so he could get a crack at some stage this year, and Ramon Philippine, the big winger, he's gone as well. So they've lost probably 3 of their gun players, but they've recruited quite well. With Jacob Ling coming from Newcastle, Rod Griffin, a bit of a PNG journeyman, he's in the pack as well. So, like Ethan said, they're going to be really tough in the middle, very strong forward pack. A bit of a question mark over the halves for the Jets, but Ben and Shane Walker are always optimistic and they're confident. But yeah, look, I like the look of the North side as well. Very classy side. In my opinion, Kurt Baptiste is the best player in the competition. Probably him and Luke Capewell at hooker, and very unlucky not to be playing NRL, Kurt Baptiste. So he won in the game last year in the semi-final, knocked the Jets out. So yeah, he'll be dangerous again today.
Definitely a lot of big raps on Kurt Baptiste. Another big game this weekend, the Northern Pride up against the Mackay Cutters up at Barlow Park at 6:30 p.m. our time. What do we think of this one?
Lots of coverage up here for that too.
Is there, yeah?
For a particular trophy. And looks like Mackay, I don't think have ever beaten the Pride up here, so they're giving them a really, really good basting on television, not just the usual press circles.
Yeah, I'm sort of surprised that the Pride missed the top 5 last year. They're usually one of the really sort of consistent sides there, and of course they have that link with the North Queensland Cowboys, so they usually end up with a pretty strong forward pack on game day. I reckon they'll be right up towards the pointy end again this year. They've signed a few players from England and a new coach as well, so I think lock in the Pride for the top 5, hopefully a jinx. But
fair call. Final match of the round, guys. The Sunny Coast Seagulls up against the Central Coast Capras. Mick, am I right in saying that I read during the week that the Central Coast haven't won away from home in quite a long time?
Yeah, that's true. It's I think it's stretching back to midway through 2011, I believe. So, yeah, their away record is concerning. You know, in the ace up their sleeve, of course, is Jason Hetherington, former Bulldog and Queensland star. He's obviously a tough guy, very passionate about the CQ region, so they're definitely going to play for him. They don't have a lot of big names. They're just all a bunch of kids and different guys from the central Queensland region and a few recruits. So, look, I think they'll go okay. They'll definitely beat teams up in Rockhampton at their Brown Park Fortress, but away from home, yeah, it's a worry for them.
Fair enough. Look, that's all the time we got for today. Michael, thank you very much for being here on the show. You're welcome back anytime.
No worries, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, mate. Very exciting times coming up in the Intrust Super Cup, the first round getting underway this weekend. Stay with us here on SportzScene. When we come back, we've got some cricket to talk. It's time to talk to cricket. Stay with us.
1 in 5 of us are affected.
10% of us will have at least one.
And the numbers double for Indigenous Australians.
Just as quick as a click of your fingers, it can happen to anyone at any time.
What would you do if someone close to you was having a seizure?
Imagine if it was your child.
My brother has it. My sister has it.
I have it.
I have it too. You're not alone.
You're not different.
And you have a bright future ahead of you.
So click for kids.
I'm Amy Lee, and I'm part of it.
Life. Life is for living. So live it. Life. Life is for giving. So give it. Giving blood is cool. Needing it isn't. Red Cross. Give a little. Life is for living. Life is for giving. Help save lives. Please give blood.
Hi, I'm Nikki Buckley with a tip on how you can support Coast Care. Now, when boating, use biodegradable oil in your two-stroke engine whenever possible and always anchor securely in a sandy space. The reefs and seagrass beds can be damaged when anchors are allowed to shift. For more coastline information, call 1800 603 772.
Logan City's 101 FM. 1 FM.
You're listening to Saturday Sports Scene on 101 FM.
Welcome back to Sports Scene here on 101 FM. It's Kevin Braysher, Craig Crowley, Ethan James and Darren Madigan with us. Big thank you again to Michael Hillier for coming on the show. Just then, a terrific Intrust Super Cup segment. We'll keep you up to date with all the Intrust Super Cup action as the season rolls on. Now it's time to talk some cricket. It wouldn't be cricket if there wasn't some controversy to talk about. And boy, did they throw up a doozy this week.
Let's bet him at 10 now.
four blokes were stood down during the week. It was Shane Watson, the vice-captain, Mitchell Johnson, James Pattinson, Robinson and Usman Khawaja were all stood down after failing to deliver a presentation on their value to the team and how the team as a whole could improve. Watson headed home immediately. He was apparently going to head home after the third test anyway to be with his wife, but he headed straight home. Apparently, the reasoning from Cricket Australia is that it was the last straw in a long line of minor offences and attitude problems within the team that they're trying to fix. Among those problems in the culture of the side, the things that they've listed are showing up late for team meetings, missing medical and physio appointments, sleeping in and holding up the team bus, wearing the wrong uniforms, failing to consistently complete Cricket Australia health and wellbeing forms, and some players having fluctuating weight and being overweight, things like that. There was a great article during the week, I thought, by Crash Crowley. He basically said that it was hitting... Crash Crowley, yes, Crash Craig over there.
I didn't know him right.
I did say Crash Crowley, didn't I? Crash Craddock. So I didn't even pick up on it. Crash Craddock, Robert Crash Craddock during the week. He said, was it a matter of swatting a fly with a sledgehammer? Yes, but does that make it wrong? No. That was his argument, that it was drawing a line in the sand. Basically, that's the way I see it as well. Guys, what did we make of a lot of talk around this subject?
Indeed. Look, I agree. I think there's fault all round on this, but the coach asked them to do something. They didn't do it. Yes, it probably is swatting, whatever the analogy was.
Fly with a sledgehammer. I thought it was a goodie.
Fly with a sledgehammer. But the coach asked them to do something. He didn't ask them to jump off a cliff. It was a relatively simple task, and really it should have been completed. And I think at the end of the day, the only problem that I have with all of this is that Pat Howard, in my mind, spoke out of turn. I think he was probably out of line. If anybody was going to comment on whether a player is a team player or whatever, that's the job of the captain and the coach. It is not the job of somebody else in the tour party. And I have a real problem with Pat Howard and the way he handled that. You haven't heard any complaints from the coach or the captain publicly on that sort of stuff. And, that's where I'm at with it. I think there's fault all round, but I think the Australian cricket team did the right thing, but I have a problem with what Pat Howard did.
The comment that Pat Howard made that you're alluding to is he was asked whether Shane Watson was a team player. He said he is a team player sometimes.
It's not his place to do that.
Right. I think that's probably fair to say. Craig, what did you read of it?
My point on it, Darren, I'm speaking from a perspective of a coaching situation. First of all, I think there's a lot more that's happened prior to this.
Yep.
And what I reckon with Mickey Arthur, they've probably tried him. He's probably tried to be flexible with it. And it's obviously now results have gone bad. So he has to get the ship back in order. That's how I see it. So whatever way he's tried to do it, I reckon he's just testing the water. I'll give you something to do. Who's going to do it? Who's going to put it in on time? And he probably takes nothing out of the questionnaire. He knows how his side's going, but he's looking for genuine feedback, which he'll ask from his leadership group. But at the end of the day, what I think he's doing is just testing the water to see who's going to comply with this. So he's found out the blokes who are probably not going to do it. He's probably circled them, and bang, they've done it. So what he's actually trying to do is going to try to restore the culture back in the group, which any coach will do, and he's just done it to a minimal situation. Just let's go out and just do this. See who complies with it. These guys haven't complied. It's as simple as that. So what he's done, he's made a statement. And all coaches do it. They will have questionnaires. It doesn't matter what he's done. Every coach, and anyone who's listening who's coaching a side, will put a questionnaire at some stage to their players to get feedback, but just basically to see who is going to buy into the situation. Well, you've got 4 blokes here that didn't want to play. So they're on good money. I'm asking to do something. They've gone over the line. I'm trying to pull them back. They won't want to do it. Bang, I'm going to hit them.
Fair enough, Ethan.
But do you think, in terms of, it's the national cricket team, shouldn't they all want to play and shouldn't they all buy into the coach in the first place?
For sure, because you look at the amount of money these guys are making. They're not... Look, it's not an enviable sport because you are travelling all over the world, and you've got to remember the age of these cricketers. It's not like they're an 18-year-old and they've got no responsibilities per se to family and they're travelling. They're actually in their late 20s and some are going into their late 30s. So they've got young families. So it's a huge commitment, don't get me wrong. And they're away from their family for a long time. But the thing is, they want to do it. They get the dollars to do it. They commit to it. So a lot of the times they take their families with them, so they're having that opportunity. I'm just saying, these guys are smart men, and it sounds like they just don't want to be told what to do. Well, I'm sorry to say it's a sport that they get a lot of money for. Do it.
Yeah, I agree.
Do it.
And it's the very top level of the sport too. It's not, it's not county cricket. It's not local cricket. It's the national team. And if the coach asks you to do something, you do it. You buy in. But what it shows is that there's more underlying problems there. They wouldn't not do it purely just because I don't feel like doing that. There's fractions within that side and friction and all the rest of it there. Basically, the next question I'll ask is what becomes of the players as a result of this? There's all sorts of speculation with Shane Watson that he may not. If he returns to the team, will he be vice-captain again? He may not return to Test cricket. He might just be a short-form player. I'll go back to this Crash Craddock article, basically what he put for him. He said Shane Watson should never be vice-captain again. If he comes back to the side, not vice-captain, because it's well-known within Cricket Australia circles that he and Clark are not compatible as a captain-vice-captain situation. Says Usman Khawaja, while talented, has problems buying into these culture things, and basically said that he's lazy, and that is the problem that selectors have with him. He's funny one. Mitch Johnson, he said Mitch Johnson lives on planet Mitch and just needs to get his head right with it. And James Patton said, he's probably going to be okay, just needs to pull his socks up. And he said he's probably the only one of them that is indispensable, and the one that they need just as much as he wants to be there. So
probably being led by the others.
Exactly right. So basically, he needs to be a leader of the new generation rather than a follower of it. It's basically what he said with
of the old generation.
I don't mean to just sit here and read out that article, but I read it and I just agreed with all of it. So I thought it was worth bringing up.
Oh, look, for sure, you've got situations. It's a case of we don't want to get into a dictatorship through the coach, but he is guiding our international side. We're not talking about interstate side. Yes. We're talking international side. So it's going to get coverage. He's trying to guide them to the best of his ability. They've got to follow, or he's got to squash him. And if Watson is going to not play the game, tear up his contract, give someone else a chance. I tell you what, you'll give. The money they're getting, I bet the Australian ladies cricket side would say, I'll sign anything you want for the money they're getting. My point is, look at the lesser sports that aren't getting the money. They will buy into anything because they want to succeed. Here's these guys. It sounds like they're just getting too much. They're getting looked after too well. And here it is. Oh, look, I'm at this. I don't have to do what everyone else is doing. I'm just going to do what I want to do. And that doesn't wash in a team sport. Even though cricket is one of them sports that's /team /individuals. So it's really, really difficult. But you've got to comply. You've got to be as one. And when your side's winning, obviously that helps. But at this stage, this is where you've got to dig deep, is when you're not winning.
Exactly.
I think the other thing, too, is you've got to remember, too, there's a sense of urgency about all of this. We've got to get this right. By the time we leave India, we've got 10 test matches in a row over a fairly long period of time coming up, and it's 2 Ashes series back-to-back. And let's face it, as far as Australian cricket is concerned, from a revenue-generating point of view, that's the big one for us.
Absolutely.
All right? So the Cricket Australia will be looking at this very, very closely. They'll want to know what the hell is going on. They'll be tearing their hair out thinking, geez, did this have to happen while they were away instead of at home? When we could have controlled it. They weren't able to control this. They've got to get it sorted out because, as I said, there is a sense of urgency in this because we've got to go to England. And there's a lot at stake. There's a real lot at stake, not just careers.
There's going to be short-term pain out of this. I don't see us winning this India series. I think that when it's gone, we can accept that. We probably will. And the Ashes series, we might struggle a little bit in that first one. But I think the long-term gain of it, if they can get the whole team to buy into the culture of it, I think it'll be for the better. And I think it's better that they take this stand now while they're in India rather than letting it come to a head while we're over in England in the biggest series we got. Just quickly,
briefly,
mate.
I know we're nearly at the top of the hour. England, 465 in their first innings. They've got New Zealand 5 for 125 right now in reply. That's the team we're playing.
That's what we're up against. On their turf too, and a side that's beaten us in 3 of the last Ashes series, so we've got to turn it around quickly. Only a minute and a half left until the top of the hour. The fresh news update coming up. You're listening to SportzScene. Kevin Braysher, Craig Crowley, Ethan James and Darren Madigan. We'll briefly talk this third test, which is underway over in Mohali over in India. It started really well for us. Ed Cowan and Dave Warner had a record first wicket partnership for an Australian side over in India, which was a terrific response from 2 guys who have been really under the pump. I was watching at the time thinking, oh, this is great. We're going along okay. Warner gets out for 71. In comes Clark at 3. I'm thinking, how good's this? We never had this many runs when Clark comes in a long time. And he's gone first ball. It was disappointing to see. I'm not, going to crack at him because he's been so good for so long, but it was interesting to see after so long people pressuring to move up the order. He finally does it, and he gets himself out going down the wicket to a spinner. It was disappointing to see, but what can you do? I mean, India fought back well. End of day 2, 7 for 273, Craig. Can we pull off a win in this test, or not enough runs there? Not enough time, really, in 4 days. 3 days.
Look, you'd like to say yes, but you just don't know with the Australian cricket side. Like, you'd know... I always go back to the era that we were successful in, but they would bowl, consistently. So, I don't know. I can't give.
Yeah,
sit on the fence.
It's pretty much the way everyone's feeling with this one here. We've got to go to the news now. Keep an eye on the cricket over the next couple of days as it all wraps up. But you're listening to Sports Scene. Stay with us when we come back after the break. We got Super Rugby, we got Netball, we got A-League, we got Motorsport, we got everything. Stay with us.
Your station, 101 FM, with Saturday Sports Scene.
Welcome back to Sports Scene here on 101 FM. Kevin Braysher here with you, along with the rest of the panel. AFL Queensland Hall of Famer Craig Crowley, the QRL's Ethan James, Sports Scene founder Darren Madigan, taking a quick look at all the updated scores from recent times. The NRL, the Broncos 22-6 over the Dragons, the Bulldogs 20-16 over the Eels earlier in the week. In the NAB Cup, the Brisbane Lions 109-69 over the Carlton Blues, bringing home their first piece of silverware in 10 years. The Super Rugby, the Cheetahs got up by 1 point over the Waratahs, 27-26. The Hurricanes defeat the Highlanders 23-19, and the Chiefs 35-24. Darren, what's the go with the tennis worlds?
Well, let's see what's happening with the tennis. We're having a bit of trouble this morning. For any of you thinking about putting Internet Explorer 10 on, don't do it. It's not good. But at the moment, you know that Roger Federer went down to Rafael Nadal. I can tell you now that Djokovic got up over Songa 3-1 in the other quarter-final there. Andy Murray and Juan Martin Del Potro are on court at the moment, and Andy Murray is 3-2 up in the first set. And as far as the girls are concerned, we've got Angelique Kerber has a walkover against Samantha Stoser, who had a calf strain, and Carolyn Wozniacki goes through to the semi-final against Victoria Azarenka.
That's it. Thanks, mate. In the NBL, the Breakers 114 over Melbourne 84. Cairns Taipans 76-73 over the Adelaide 36ers. The Wollongong Hawks 81-74 over the Kings. And in the A-League, Adelaide and Newcastle played out a 1-1 draw. Time to move on now to the world of rugby union and some bad news for the Australian side. After last year, we thought it couldn't get any worse with all the injuries that they sustained. Well, it started off pretty badly this year. David Pocock gone for the year with an ACL tear. And Darren, of course, everyone immediately goes to the man who replaced him for the Brumbies, George Smith, who was terrific on return, but all the rules say we can't have him.
No! Crazy, isn't it? We talked about this this morning. I did ask you the question whether this was a rugby, an international rugby union law, or was it the Australian thing? It's an Australian thing. It's just carrying on this long-standing business of us not picking anybody who's not playing in our current domestic competition. Gee, that's tough. You know, this is the scenario that we looked at when George Smith came back to Australia, the possible scenario that could happen, and now it gets nipped in the bud for some paperwork. Come on.
That's it.
Paperwork?
I know. Gets in the way, and leading into such an important tour. It's disappointing for David Pocock, who is, arguably the best open side flanker in the world, to miss a Lions tour. I doubt he'll still be around in 12 years' time, the next time they come. So it's a big personal loss for him.
It'd be heartbreaking, wouldn't it? And the silly part about it is we're doing it to him. It's not somebody in the Northern Hemisphere sitting behind a desk at rugby union headquarters. We're doing it to him with the paperwork. I just think this is the sort of insane rubbish that goes on in sports administration at times that defies common sense. You should pick the best man for the job. If he's available to play, let him play.
Well, there's two guys who will be fighting over that. Well, two guys in particular, I think, will be fighting over that spot vacated by David Pocock. The man who filled it last season when Pocock was out, Michael Hooper, and the Reds' Liam Gill. Two very good young players. Obviously, it's a big loss, David Pocock, but those guys, very good, and it's a chance for them to really prove themselves and stamp their authority on that position. So, with every loss, there's a silver lining there. So, hopefully one of those young guys can do it again. Michael Hooper was very good for the Wallabies last year. Other good news this week, the good news this week is that Will Genia will return for the Queensland Reds. That will be he's going to play the first half, he says. That's all the talk this week with him coming back. But that's a massive boost for the Reds as they go into their game against the Western Force tonight. Isn't it great to see him back, Darren?
Oh, isn't it? Look, I think things are starting to look, reasonably well, as much as what I just said about David Pocock and that. I mean, the rugby union in general, Australian Rugby Union, is doing a great job of promoting everything that's coming up. And, I'm really, this Lions tour, all the push, the people, getting people like Nick Farr-Jones and that involved for interviews, the Reds and the Super 15 and everything at the moment, we're doing all right. So I'm looking forward to seeing how things go this weekend.
That game will be against the Western Force tonight at Suncorp Stadium at 7:40 Eastern Standard Time. They'd already changed it for me on the website. Normally I have to change it myself, but yes, it is 7:40 Queensland time. Queensland Reds up against the Western Force. Other games this weekend. What was that, Darren, before I move on?
Sorry, Kev, just to interrupt you. I think you were just talking about a good mate, colleague, Robert Craddock, Craddock. I think it might have been him that actually wrote an article too on the Western Force during the week, since the Reds are playing them, and just basically saying, is it all over for them, mate? Should the rugby union start putting the money into the Melbourne Rebels, maybe?
Hey, it's a good question, because they've been in the competition for a number of years now and haven't ever really looked like performing to a strong level. So it's arguable, and the crowds are picking up down in Melbourne. They're starting to get a footing. They themselves have shown a lot of improvement. So I think it's probably a fair argument.
Yeah, and let's face it, I mean, they were given a big free kick, weren't they, when they started the Western Force? I mean, it was a bit like, I won't try and pick on any other teams, but, when they actually set up their playing roster and everything like that, I mean, there were some huge names that ended up going over to Perth.
Yes, it was.
And it just hasn't happened for them. I mean, I think their first season, they got a draw and no wins, if memory serves. And it took until the second season for them to notch up their first win. And with the playing roster that they had, that shouldn't have happened. And there hasn't been much better since.
Yeah, it's a fair question to ask. It's been tough times for them, and I think they're in for another tough year this year. But at the same time, you need to have, I think, there's definitely a base of supporters over there in Perth, a lot of expats and all the rest of it. So there is the support there. They just got to get their act together on the field.
Yeah, a lot of South Africans over there as well. It's not just Australians coming from the eastern states. So, I mean, it is a tough question. I mean, do you continue to prop up? And I'm not sure how financially, I haven't done my checking up on this. I'm not sure how financially well off the Western Force are. But, it's one of those things. Do you keep propping up the Western team over there, given that they do have that supporter base? Or do you play in an area that is essentially foreign to the sport, but as Craig pointed out last week, they play it in the private schools?
Exactly right. Look, we'll wait and see. It'll be a tough one for them again this week, up against the Queensland Reds, who haven't been at their best so far this year, but continue to win. As good sides do, they can win when they're not at their best, and that's what the Reds have been doing. Other games this weekend, the Crusaders up against the Bulls. That'll be a ripper. The Crusaders still without a win. I think at home you got to probably back them in that, but Bulls very good side as well. That'll be a tight one. And the Brumbies head over to South Africa to take on the Sharks. Brumbies looking to continue their very good start to the year. They gave it to the Waratahs last week, and I think there's every chance of this getting a win over there in South Africa. It's a tough road trip, but Brumbies looking very, very good this season. Quick look at the A-League at the moment this weekend. Of course, last night a 1-1 draw between Adelaide and Newcastle. Tonight we've got the Melbourne Heart up against the Western Sydney Wanderers, looking for their 10th straight. Western Sydney Wanderers just going from strength to strength. Shinji Ono will not play. I saw he's down with injury, but I still think the Wanderers just on a roll. Hard to tip against them. Sydney FC up against the Melbourne Victory. Two teams that have great crowd support as well. It'll be a passionate, vocal crowd there at this game. I think Sydney FC is still very good at home, so I think they've got every chance of causing an upset. They're inside the top 6 at the moment, the Sydney FC, so see how that one goes out. Perth Glory up against Wellington Phoenix. Again, I think you can't be tipping the Wellington Phoenix has continued to struggle. And then we got the Central Coast Mariners up against the Brisbane Roar. The Brisbane Roar dropped just below the top 6 now. They're sitting down in 7th place, but they're still well and truly within striking distance. They need to keep winning. Not many games left, just the 3 rounds left of the season. But they've got a tough ask against the Central Coast Mariners at home.
Yeah, fly in the ointment stuff, that is, because we're talking about a 5-point differential. That's just a bit over 1.5 wins between the Central Coast Mariners and the Western Sydney Wanderers.
Yeah.
And really, the Roar could just cause an awful lot of trouble there.
Absolutely right. We'll take a look at the A-League ladder. The Western Sydney Wanderers still out on top. Central Coast Mariners in second. Melbourne Victory, Adelaide, Newcastle and Sydney makes up your top 6. Brisbane in 7, Perth in 8, Melbourne Heart in 9, and Wellington Phoenix down the bottom. We've got to go to a break now. When we come back, we'll do a quick wrap of the European football scene, and then we'll move on to the world of netball with Darren Madigan.
Life is for living, so live it. Life is for giving, so give it. Giving blood is cool, needing it isn't. Red Cross. Give a little. Life is for living. Life is for giving. Help save lives. Please give blood.
It's been a tough year. Are you ready for a major weather event? 2/3 of Queenslanders do not have an emergency kit. Hardenup.org gives you access to 150 years of severe weather history and dozens of practical tips to protect your home, family and pets. When extreme weather hits, we have to be ready. Be aware, be prepared and help others. Visit hardenup.org and start your plan today.
Hi, Daryl here for Coast Care. Thousands of Australians are working in Coast Care groups to protect our environment, taking action to protect and rehabilitate their local headlands, estuaries and dunes, and keeping waterways clear of garbage. If you'd like to be part of the solution, call Coast Care on 1800 803 772. That's 1800 803 772.
Having a party or barbecue at your house this Saturday night? Make sure you tune in to Saturday Night Party Mix from 7 p.m. on your station 101 FM.
101 FM.
You're listening to Saturday Sports Scene on the voice of Logan City, 101 FM.
Welcome back to Sports Scene here on 101 FM. Kevin Braysher, Craig Crowley, Ethan James and Darren Madigan with you at 16 minutes past 9 here on 101 FM. Your next fresh news update coming up at the top of the hour. Remember, if you want to get in contact with us here at Sports Scene, send us a text message on 0429 506 0429 506 704. I forgot it for a second there. And we're also on social media on Facebook and YouTube. So facebook.com, youtube.com/sportscene, SportzScene. Darren, before we move on to all the netball, what's been happening in the world of European football? Barcelona came back when no one really expected them to.
Wow, Barcelona came back all right, 4-0 over AC Milan. They were 2-0 down on their away goals as well. And, the bottom line is they're through. So the teams that have gone through are Galatasaray after beating Schalke, Juventus beating Celtic, Bayern Munich drawing level with Arsenal but winning on the away goal rule, Borussia Dortmund over Shakhtar Donetsk, Barcelona through, as we mentioned, Real Madrid, Paris Saint-Germain, and also Malaga. So that means your quarterfinals, which have been decided, will be Paris Saint-Germain, the David Beckham team playing Barcelona, and their first leg will be on the 2nd of April. Also on the 2nd of April, Bayern Munich will play Juventus. Malaga on the 3rd will play Borussia Dortmund and Real Madrid will play Galatasaray. So that's your quarterfinals in the Champions League. In far as the Europa League is concerned, quarterfinals have also been decided there. And Chelsea will play Rubin Kazan. Tottenham Hotspur will play Swiss side Basel. Fenerbahce will play Lazio and Benfica will play Newcastle United. All of those matches, the first leg of those to be played on the 4th of April. Also, English Premier League, your league at the moment is Manchester United, well and truly leading Man City, 71 points to 59. Tottenham Hotspur and Chelsea are your 4 to go to Europe next year so far. In 5th place, Arsenal and Liverpool and Everton leading up from there. This weekend's matches, Everton play Man City tonight. Aston Villa QPR, Southampton at home to Liverpool, Stoke and West Brom, Swansea and Arsenal, and Manchester United at Old Trafford play host to Reading as well.
That's it. Thanks heaps for that, mate. We move now to the world of netball. I know last week you were particularly fired up with some stuff. What's happening this week?
Well, weren't we? And, I want to thank all the people who did get in touch with me from the netball community to support what I was saying, and thank you so much for that. And it turns out that I forgot that Netball Queensland were actually having their AGM that morning as well. So a whole new board pretty much went in. So apart from the president and the financial controller, there are a whole heap of new faces on the board of Netball Queensland. And as the next few weeks roll on, we'll see if we can get a couple of those to speak to as we go through. But as far as big news during the week, as far as the national side is concerned, 7 test matches announced for later this year. We will play New Zealand as per usual. 2 matches over in New Zealand, one in Invercargill down the bottom of the world, and one in Auckland, and then back to Australia in Adelaide. We'll play them. We'll also play them at Rod Laver Arena, also in Canberra, and there'll be 2 matches against the Malawi Queens, and one of those will be at the Gold Coast Entertainment Centre, and the other one is still to be decided on the 19th of October. As far as the girls are concerned, there is a bye this week in the Queensland Champions Cup, the State League. And as we spoke to Paula Stewart, the coach of the under-21 side last week, we are having a really rough time down there at the moment. Queensland have lost all 5 of their matches so far. We'll be playing a 5th and 6th place playoff tomorrow, but the semi-finals at the moment will be Victoria playing Western Australia at 10:30 our time this morning, and South Australia will play New South Wales in the other semi-final. Victoria ended up finishing on top of the under-21 national competition as far as the ladder was concerned, and obviously they're into the finals now this weekend to decide the national champions there. As far as the State League is concerned, currently the Tigers are sitting on top ahead of the Lynx. Cougars, West Lions make up the 4. The Golden South Jags, Paula Stewart's team, just sitting outside. The Elite Development Squad, who aren't eligible for the finals, are next after that. And the McDonald Steel Cats and the Logan City Council Wildcats are bringing up the bottom at the moment. But it's only 3 rounds into the season. Next matches, the next one before we speak again will be on Wednesday night, with the Elite Development Squad to play the Suncoast Lynx. That will be at the Logan Metro there at 7 o'clock this coming Wednesday night. So try and get into that and support the girls. As far as the Firebirds are concerned...
Yes, I was going to ask you about this one. Their season gets underway next week on the 24th, the Queensland Firebirds up against the Southern Steel. How are things looking for them leading into this?
Look, if we go on pre-season form, they're actually looking pretty good at the moment. I mean, they came out of that Melbourne Vixens invitational tournament, which 8 of the 10 ANZ teams have played, looking pretty good. I think we only lost 1 match, and it wasn't counted as one of the fair income matches that were played down there. So they came away basically saying they're undefeated after all that. The squad is Romelda Aiken, the Jamaican superstar. Laura Clemesha, she's a girl from Toowoomba and coming out of State League. She's currently with the under-21s team, I think, at the moment as well, and apparently playing up a storm. Laura Geitz, we all know Laura. Nicola Gray, poor old Nicola, she's been the subject of a bit of me having a go at her and stuff over the last couple of years. I wasn't having a go at her personally, but she was the player who was brought in as an emergency over the last year or so. Well, she's got a fair income contract with the Firebirds now at wing attack and goal attack. Demelza McLeod. Demelza is a former Firebird from about 2009. I think she played back in the Commonwealth Bank Trophy days as well. She's been around. She's retired once or twice, but she's back fair income playing for the Firebirds this season. Abby McCulloch is a girl from the New South Wales underage rep team. She's come up through that system, and we've got a couple of girls like that. Nad Medhurst, dead set, one of the superstars of world netball. Jacinta Messer come up through the State League a couple of years after she probably should have, but she is there these days and played wonderfully well the times that she got on the court last year, and she had a very good tournament down at pre-season tournament down in Melbourne too. Chelsea Pittman, another New South Wales girl. She's been with us a couple of years now. Previously played for the Canterbury Tactics. Kimberly Ravion. This girl ended up playing for Australia recently before she'd even signed a contract, her first contract in the ANZ Championship. So she is really one to look out for. Another girl has come up through the New South Wales underage system and is an AIS scholarship holder as well. Gabby Simpson, another one of those New South Wales girls, and Amelia Ann Wells, the girl from Bundaberg, and hopefully she will actually get a fair bit of time on court this year. The problem is the woman that she's got to replace is Nat Medhurst, and it's a bit rough when you've got to replace one of the superstars of the sport. So basically, the bottom line is the gains for this year are Laura Clemesha, Nicola Gray, Demelza McLeod has come from the Southern Steel, so she'll be playing her old teammates in 8 days' time. Abby McCulloch, Kimberly Ravion and Gabrielle Simpson. We have lost Candice Adams from the Gold Coast. Shannon Eaglin's gone to the Vixens. Kira Tromp, the word is she's taking a year off. She hasn't actually retired. She's taking a year off to get her leg in that right. Alyssa McLeod has gone to the Vixens. Lauren Nurse, a great friend of this program, the former captain, has retired from the sport. And Amy Steele has gone to the Vixens. So when you do your count up, 5 Queenslanders, 1 Jamaican, 1 Victorian and 5 New South Wales girls. Unfortunately for the Queenslanders, it's probably unlikely that 2 or 3 of those will get much court time this year. And yes, you will probably hear me shooting my mouth off again.
And we look forward to that, mate. There was Waikato Bay of Plenty Magic. Last year took out the ANZ Championship. Have you got an early tip for this one?
Look, Firebirds are looking good, but they were looking good last year as well. I think the Magic and also the Mystics are very strong. And I wouldn't count out another New Zealand team, but look out for the Vixens. They've picked up some good players, and also the West Coast side as well. They've got some good players, including a girl from Bundaberg. I think she's from Chanel Gomes, who's a Queenslander, who we let her go, and we shouldn't have. She's a great young player. But we've got the former Australian coach Norma Plummer coaching that side, and she doesn't really know how to lose, Norma. So I think she's put together a good squad, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them do very well this year.
That's it, mate. As we say, the ANZ Championship gets underway next week. It all begins next weekend on the 24th of March. And Darren, thank you very much for getting us up to date with all of that. We will stay with it in the coming weeks. We'll go to a break now. When we come back, we'll talk some motorsport. We'll get Lee Hanatschek from the Australian Karting Association on the line.
Do you have a street light that's not functioning correctly outside your property? Perhaps you've noticed a floodlight over a zebra crossing that's not operating. Well, Energex would like you to report it to them by calling 13 12 53 or completing an online form for faulty streetlights on their website at energex.com.au. Remember also that the council has to pay the running cost of all the streetlights, whether they're working or not. So let's get the most for our rateable dollar by reporting the streetlights not functioning to Energex on 13 12 53 or on their website energex.com.au.
Four-wheel driving on Fraser Island can be dangerous. Take sand driving seriously. Don't let your trip turn to tragedy. Slow down, stick to the speed limit. In good conditions, 80 kilometres an hour on the beach and 30 on inland tracks. Slower is safer. Seatbelts save lives. Wear them, it's the law. Police patrol the beach anytime. Make your visit to Fraser fun, not fatal.
If you want to know what's happening on the roads, make sure you tune into 101 FM Monday to Friday during Breakfast and Drive for the latest traffic updates presented by your station sponsor, Yellow Cabs.
Hilux Heaven and 4x4 Heaven are now in Beenleigh. They're not just a Toyota Hilux part specialist. They cater for all 4x4 enthusiasts, supplying new and 4x4 parts for most makes and models. Soon 4x4 Heaven will be able to take care of the DIY mechanic by offering a workshop for hire for those little jobs you know you can do yourself. Become a VIP customer and save. Contact Hilux and 4x4 Heaven at 102 Harburg Drive, Beenleigh, or call our sponsor on 3807 8828.
Wait, Ha.
Oui, monsieur.
Can I have the rest of this in a doggy bag?
But of course, I love doggies. But please make sure you store the food properly so it doesn't go off and cause food poisoning.
Looks fine to me.
Oui, it's fine now, but after 4 hours unrefrigerated, I wouldn't feed it to a dog.
I was thinking of having it tomorrow night.
Well, that's okay, as long as you put it straight in the fridge when you get home. Wait a minute, you don't have a dog, do you?
No, but you're not French either.
A message from the Food Safety Information Council.
101 FM.
You're listening to Saturday Sports Scene on 101 FM.
Welcome back to Sports Scene here on 101 FM. It's Kevin Braysher, Craig Crowley, Ethan James and Darren Madigan with you. And joining us on the line to talk all things motorsport, Mr. Lee Hanatschek from the Australian Karting Association. Lee, welcome to the show again.
Thanks, Kev. Great to be with you.
Always is great to have you, mate. And you're down there for a karting display at the moment, is that right, down in Melbourne?
Yes, this weekend it's a bit of a display down at the Formula 1 Grand Prix. It's now 4 days of listening to cars go around, but I don't really see too much. But certainly spreading the word about karting down here, and it's been a busy 4 days, and day 4 or 5 or something I'm classing it as. So, we'll keep on trucking.
All right, I know you're busy down there, mate, so we'll get straight into it. The Australian Grand Prix this weekend. Sebastian Vettel, top of the practice sheets yesterday.
Yeah, Vettel topped the time sheets in both sessions yesterday. Just narrowly faster than his Red Bull teammate Mark Webber, who's the local hometown hero, you could say.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to be interesting to see how it all pans out with new cars this year. The fact that we've got a few new drivers in the field, I don't think that'll change a lot up the front of the field. Lewis Hamilton was interesting. He was fourth fastest yesterday with his new team. Daniel Ricciardo, I think he was 14th from memory. I haven't got a sheet in front of me, but I'm pretty sure he was 14th.
He was 14th.
So not a bad memory there after a quick glance at the TV screen. And so it should be interesting. Maybe Mark Webber can finally break through for his maiden Australian Grand Prix win.
Well, that's what everybody in Australia really wants to see, is to see him win on Australian soil. Can he do it?
Well, I think he's got to do a deal with Jenson Button first, because Webber seems to win Button's race, and Button seems to win his race. So certainly, I've got to do a bit of a deal there, I think, to make sure that they each win their home race this year.
Yeah, fair enough. Darren, how have you been seeing it? I know you've had some troubles with the coverage so far at the GP.
Yeah, it's been atrocious, but that's another story, I guess. I mean, it's just a little bit too folksy, and a little bit too many people on the screen who don't know what they're talking about. I mean, at one stage there, I was watching a cooking show in some tent yesterday, a hospitality tent. Neil Perry, that's right. Neil Perry and Nicole Livingston talking cooking when I wanted to watch motor racing. They were at the track. I wasn't watching a different show, but that's the way it worked out. But anyway,
you've got to understand these commercial agreements that go on. There's a lot of money being played here, and today I think you'll find there will be less commercial agreements, more racing.
I'm very aware of the commercial agreements. I'm just getting old and cranky, Lee.
Yes, we know you are a dinosaur. We know that.
I'm less tolerant of it, my little friend. But as far as the way things are going at the moment, I mean, it's very interesting to see the way it's all working out. And the other thing that'll be interesting today too, in qualifying, we will not be able. They'll only be able to use the DRS in the areas that they can use them in the race, whereas last year they could use in qualifying the DRS pretty much during anywhere they wanted in the lap in qualifying. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. Also, the tyre degradation is going to be fascinating, because Pirelli have basically offered up a super soft and the medium compound. So there's a lot of controversy over how these things are going to go. The general feeling at the moment was that there will be an extra pit stop involved simply because of that. Is that still the feeling down in Melbourne?
I think that's the case. I mean, always going to be very interesting for this weekend to see how they will react with the new tyres. I mean, it's an unknown quantity. That's the biggest thing. Is they've done two 90-minute runs yesterday, 90-minute sessions, definitely into a 90-minute run, we found that a lot of cars basically went out to start, had a big break in the middle, and then you just had every car on track for the last part of the session. And that was, that gave them a bit of indication of what to expect. But until they take the track tomorrow, and after that first and second pit stop, and to really assess where things are at, that's when we'll get a clearer picture. So, that's one of the really good things about it being the first event here at Melbourne, as there are so many unknowns, and that's it adds that element here at Albert Park, which it's a wide, spacious track. Huge lake in the middle. I can assure you that I've walked past it about 5 or 6 times on my journeys to this weekend. So there's a lot of people rolling through, and the atmosphere is starting to build here this morning.
I think the other fascinating variable in all of this too is that next year we go to a new formula. Next year we go to a 1.6 litre turbocharged V6 format. The engines will be limited to 15,000 RPM, so that the teams are already starting to work on those cars and especially those engines around the place. So how much normally when all your thoughts will be into working your car and working your engine and all that sort of stuff during a season, that's all going to be split this year between that and getting the car for 2014 ready as well. The word is I think Mercedes are already well and truly on their way with that sort of thing at the moment as well. But there's going to be some fascinating things that come out in the wash in this. My feelings pretty much for the Grand Prix at the moment from what I've seen so far is a lot of the status quo from the previous season is probably still going to remain. That means Red Bull, Ferrari, and with the Lotus being fly in the ointment, and possibly Mercedes there as well. Although we were a bit concerned with what happened yesterday, with the Hamilton car going off the track and then the Rosberg car being basically pulled from practice.
That leads to the question I was going to ask you next, Lee, is can we expect to see anyone outside the usual suspects towards the top of the podium?
Realistically, no. I can't see anyone else coming up with a surprise packet. It's going to be the usual suspects. There's no doubt about it. And yesterday's qualifying practice was an indication of that. But I think today it has had some showers this morning here in Melbourne. The weather looks like it's Melbourne, so I'm going to say it's clearing. But I look one way and it's still grey over the other side. So they're expecting scattered showers throughout the day. Hopefully that doesn't play too much of a part in the outcome of everything. But certainly I think, the usual suspects will be up there. And I don't think we'll see any surprises.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough then, mate. The V8s also, they're there this weekend, but they're not racing for championship points. Just explain to us why that's happening.
Yeah, that's basically a TV rights deal. There's two aspects to it. Initially, it was back in the day before last year when V8s first got their own pit area, they never had an actual pit facility. It was simply they were out the back and they used the front of the F1 pit garages as their sort of makeshift pit areas. But last year there were some new pit areas that were built. So that they had these great new facilities, which is fantastic. But the thing with it is that the F1 is telecast on Channel 10 or 1HD if you want to watch it in HD, and all the championship series is for V8 supercars is on Channel 7. So there's a rights issue there, and part of the agreement. Any championship event is to be on 7. So that's one thing. And the FIA are very reluctant to have lengthy support races on the schedule. Hence, last year when they went to Abu Dhabi, it was 3 8-lap sprint races or something for a championship around over there. So they're sort of the main reasons. Certainly, it's in years gone by, it's been used as very much of a test session here at Albert Park, but I can assure you these drivers are out there to win. The new car, they're out there to get as many laps as possible in there, show speed, and give them a true indication of where they are against their opposition with these new car of todays.
Yes,
not car of tomorrow, car of todays.
That's it. It was Fabian Coulthard who came out with back-to-back wins before this exhibition round. He'd never claimed a pole position race win or a top 10 season finish in the category. It's a big win for him, even though it doesn't give him points.
Yeah, certainly. It's a huge win. It's a huge confidence boost as well. I actually bumped into Brad Jones walking out of the track yesterday. I had a quick chat with him, and he was very happy with the day. Of course, Jason Bright was also up there. Pretty sure he finished third in yesterday's second race as well. So he's shown some great pace. We've had Shane Van Gisbergen continue where he left off in Adelaide. There's a few guys scratching their head about where they've lost the pace, but it's certainly just trying to get a handle on these new cars, and it's great to see these new faces coming up the front and battling with the Red Bull Racing Australia pair of Craig Lowndes and Jamie Whincup, and it's not just a Triple Eight FPR domination.
Exactly right. I think that's going to add some interest to the division over the course of the year, mate. I know you're in a hurry, so I'll let you go there. Thank you very much for spending some time with us this morning.
Thanks, guys. All the best.
Cheers, mate. Darren, before we move on from the world of motorsport, we've got a few more things we want to talk about. We've got a couple minutes left here. So the sprint cars, mate, what's been going on with those guys? Or the sports cars, rather?
Yeah, just a few bullet points here. Of course, just in Formula One, Maldonado, there's still no certainty as to how his career is going to go over the course of the year with the death of Hugo Chavez. That's all about the state-owned oil company which sponsors Williams. Valencia could return to Formula One in 2014. There is a good chance that will happen as a European Grand Prix. Sports cars, the merger has happened between Grand Am and also the American Le Mans Series, and there was lots of talk of that in Daytona. The 24-hour of Daytona a few weeks ago, and finally they've got themselves sorted out on that front. Important for us, we do have Australians driving over there. Ryan Briscoe jumps into a car there pretty regularly, and David Brabham races an LMP1 in the American Le Mans Series as well. So we'll be keeping an eye on how those guys go. As far as NASCAR is concerned, Marcus Ambrose came 22nd last week in Las Vegas. Matt Kenseth had his first win for a while there, and the Sprint Cup standings at the moment. Jimmy Johnson, who's won the thing about 5 times or in a row, nobody's ever done that. Brad Keselowski currently second. Marcus Ambrose currently 16th after the first 3 rounds. This weekend, they are at Bristol Motor Speedway for the first of the 2 races to be held there as they do each season. This is the day race, and you may have heard myself and Lee talk about this place at times. It's a half-mile track. It is a bull ring. It holds about 160,000 people in this massive bull ring, and if you get a chance, just type in Bristol Motor Speedway into something like YouTube and take a look. This is insane. There are two pits. Both straights have pit straights on them. It's only a half mile, but somehow these cars get round there about 30 odd and they race, and it is an amazing spectacle. The night race is held in August, and it's something else. I think Lee has actually been there. We might ask him about it next week when we get to speak to him again.
That's it. Mate, thanks heaps for keeping us up to date with all of that. We've got to go to a break now. When we come back, we're going to wrap up our 2013 season preview with the AFL. Of course, last year's grand finalists, the only ones left, the Hawthorn Hawks and the Sydney Swans. We'll also get to Craig Crowley's top 8 tips. Stay with us here on SportzScene.
Do you have a street light that's not functioning correctly outside your property? Perhaps you've noticed a floodlight over a zebra crossing that's not operating. Well, Energex would like you to report it to them by calling 13 12 53 or completing an online form for faulty streetlights on their website at energex.com.au. Remember also that the council has to pay the running cost of all the streetlights, whether they're working or not. So let's get the most for our rateable dollar by reporting the streetlights not functioning to Energex on 13 12 53 or on their website energex.com.au.
Four-wheel driving on Fraser Island can be dangerous. Take sand driving seriously. Don't let your trip turn to tragedy. Slow down, stick to the speed limit. In good conditions, 80 kilometres an hour on the beach and 30 on inland tracks. Slower is safer. Seatbelts save lives. Wear them, it's the law. Police patrol the beach anytime. Make your visit to Fraser fun, not fatal.
If you want to know what's happening on the roads, make sure you tune into 101 FM Monday to Friday during Breakfast and Drive for the latest traffic updates presented by your station sponsor, Yellow Cabs.
101 FM.
Now it's it's back to Saturday Sports Scene on 101 FM.
Welcome back to Sports Scene here on 101 FM. Kevin Braysher, Craig Crowley, Ethan James and Darren Madigan with you at 17 minutes to 10. Your next fresh news update coming up at the top of the hour. We've got plenty of AFL to discuss. Only 1 week away until the start of the AFL Premiership season. But Craig, last night, the Southport Sharks, you had a jersey presentation. Your season starts next week as well.
Yeah, exactly right. We had a big night. Our jumper presentation, sort of welcoming everyone to the club, which is really exciting. Seeing all the faces and all the new faces, and especially getting their jumpers. On that note, today we've got a game at Fankhauser Oval. The Gold Coast Suns, are playing the Melbourne Demons. It starts at 11 o'clock, so their last hit out. So I would assume they would be playing pretty full listed side. So that'd be interesting. So if anyone gets a chance to get down there as quick as you can, because I think there'll be a lot of people there, and seeing the weather's come out for them, it'll be great.
Mm-hmm. And just again, before we move on to the AFL previews that we're going to wrap up, we've got to mention again the Brisbane Lions winning the NAB Cup last night, 109-69. We were saying a lot last year that there's signs of improvement coming for these guys. Are they a potential top 8 side this year, mate? I know we're going to get to your top 8 in a minute.
Yeah, look, I think so, and basically because I think they've done the real hard work of bringing the kids around. They've recruited really well in getting some senior listed players from other clubs, and I think that's really gone well. I think a lot has to do with, obviously Leuenberger standing up with injury, which he's injured again at the moment. But Longer also, Billy Longer, who's in his second year, I think, now with the club as a ruckman. They've got them sort of people that they can play and have the tools to facilitate the smaller running players. They're going to be a good side.
Yep, absolutely. All right, we'll get on with it all now. We've got 2 sides left, the 2 best sides from last year. We'll start with the Hawks, the runners-up from last year, the minor premiers and the eventual runners-up. As always, they're a side that has plenty of hype around them. There's so much talent in their side. I imagine you'd have them pretty high up again this year.
Yeah, no doubt. They'll be figuring in the top 4, no doubt. Biggest concern probably I have with them, we talk about Essendon having a very tall side. You have got the situation, if Max Bailey, who's a genuine number 1 ruckman, actually stays fit, it brings the point to, can we play Roughhead, Hale, Franklin, all big talls, and obviously Roughhead and Hale playing as temporary ruckman. I know they're throwing them around at the moment, but geez, you've got a very tall side, and this was a concern with Essendon, but it doesn't seem to be a concern with Hawthorn when you listen to the media. So they're good footballers, and Franklin plays as a low ground player anyway, even though he's 6'6", so in the old term. So that's going to be really interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how Brian Lake goes with Hawthorn. Obviously recruited from the Western Bulldogs as a key back, so that throws their back line around a little bit. And once again, they're pretty tall back there, but they've got some great small runners, some sensational players, Cyril Rioli, Sam Mitchell. Their midfield is just really strong, Brad Sewell. So, look, if they can get, once again, if any side can get their injuries intact, they're all, these top sides are going to be great sides. It's just a matter of who can manage it the best. But just across the board, they haven't recruited strong in the way of through their the rookie draft and just a normal draft. Only 5 blokes have been picked up, so their probably belief is that they're their list at the moment is young enough to get them through for a while, and they have to just keep picking at it. But, they're the real deal. And how far they go is probably, once again, up to their injury.
Just a question with that side. You say they didn't pick up a lot of guys. So what's the sort of age average in that side? Are they a youngish side? Are they a more experienced sort of side?
Look, I reckon you're the top end of 25, so these sort of blokes...
Sort of in their prime.
Yeah, they're getting to their best. On the average, obviously, there's a lot of untried there, but I think they've got enough to keep them going for probably the next 4 or 5. And if they just, they might be looking towards next year and the year after to start to solidify their underpinning players, I suppose. But at the moment, they've got enough youth in their side to sort of be pretty solid.
Dead right. Darren, what are you making of them this year?
Yeah, I agree with what Craig said. I mean, any great side has a great combination of talls and smalls. And I mean, the names that he rattled off as far as their midfielders and that was concerned is fantastic. Yeah. But any concern over the talls, I mean, guys like Hale, as you mentioned, Roughhead and Franklin, the other thing with them too is they're all goal kickers. They play up that end of the field. And, someone like... the big concern, I think, coming out of this week was the talk from the very top of the AFL that they would help Franklin move if he wanted to.
Yeah.
I found that an astonishing thing to be saying.
Yeah, but they're doing that to promote the football in possibly GWS, and I don't think that'll come to the fore, mate. I think that's more innuendo than anything else. I just couldn't see it happening. Because
I agree.
The rest of the clubs would just pull up on it, mate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, but I was just astonished at where it came from.
Yeah.
I mean, it was coming. I think it was coming out of Demetrio, wasn't it?
Yeah. You don't know, mate.
At one stage there. I mean, it's just an astonishing thing to say. Look, as Craig said, these guys are the real deal. I mean, you go through their side, and I'm going through it now. From an age point of view, yeah, if you were to average it out, it is around that mid-20s. They haven't lost a great deal. I mean, only really, I think Chance Bateman's retired.
Cameron Bruce was the other.
Cameron Bruce is gone, and really, that's about it. I mean, you go through them; they've kept their players, and that's the big thing. I mean, when you're a grand finalist or a premier, if you can manage to hold your players for the following year, you're doing really, really well. And they've managed to pretty much keep everyone that I can see.
Now, Sydney Swans were extremely good in that grand final last year, but will Hawthorn look at this year as a way to sort of right a wrong? Maybe they felt that last year was their year, and now this year they've got to get one back.
It's amazing how you look at it, Darren, isn't it? Because a couple of years back they won a premiership that they probably shouldn't have won.
Yep.
They've probably lost a grand final that they should have won. This. It's just too hard.
They finished the following year.
Yeah.
Look at where they finished the following year after they won the premiership too. I think they finished 9th, didn't they, or 10th?
Yeah.
I'm sure Richmond finished 9th, didn't they?
Yeah, Richmond would have been 9th, Darren. Don't be silly. But yeah, look, I just reckon also with Hawthorn that as any side, when they lose a grand final, that they're probably thinking they should win.
Yeah.
There is a little bit of hurt, and you listen to some of the media shows, especially with Brad Sewell on it, and he said he still hasn't watched the grand final, so they're hurting. Yeah. So whether they, where they move on from that, how they use it, and, sometimes it can go one way, sometimes it can go the other.
Yeah, fair enough. I think it's that. Just quickly, Darren, we'll move on after this.
Yeah, I think the big difference with Hawthorn this year too is from the last time when they didn't finish outside of the finals outside of the 8 last time. They did have retirements and big ones too, like Shane Crawford. This time round, they've kept their players. I think they're top 4 this year.
Fair enough. I think we can all agree that they'll be up thereabouts at the end of the season. Another side, of course, the reigning premiers, the Sydney Swans, and probably the big news in the last couple of weeks, at least as something that sort of crossed some borders here. Kieran Jack has been promoted to co-captain. He is, of course, the son of rugby league great Gary Jack. And, it's some cynical eye could say, it's because he's in Sydney and the rugby league connection, but he has really earned that and become a premier player in that competition, hasn't he?
No doubt. And the other good thing about it too, which we spoke about it earlier, was his brothers now, Brandon Jack, has been put onto their list, which is also, it's a vote of confidence, I suppose, to see that. And, it's quite funny when you watch a game and you see Gary Jack in the stands, and he's probably thinking to himself, as an old school type rugby league bloke, I hate this game, but go my son, like that sort of thing. So look, but it's good the way that's been embraced, and you see him at every game. So he's probably, it's great to see his fine. And he is, as we spoke about Carmichael Hunt a couple of weeks, he would be picked up by any other side, Carmichael Hunt, and especially now someone like Kieran Jack. He would be prime property, and it's good to see the Sydney Swans now have adopted a young, up-and-coming. It's nothing to do with the Sydney Rugby League. He is genuinely a good young footballer that he's, and obviously he's got leadership skills.
Exactly right. And what do you make of the move? Adam Goodes steps down as co-captain, but stays in the leadership group. I think that's a terrific thing as a sort of like a mentor there to help bring him along.
Darren, what do you think about Olivia a go on this?
Yeah, look, I still think, he'll still be there in a leadership capacity. I mean, it's just that he hasn't got the C against his name or anything like that. Look, Adam Goodes is an absolute legend of the sport in my eyes. And, I'm still one of those people who still thinks he's got one more Brownlow in him. I mean, the way he's played over the last few years, anything is possible with him. But, look, he is, from a leadership point of view, I'll tell you, I'll throw an analogy in here. He's the Petro Sivanasiva of our sport.
That's pretty cool. Yeah,
okay?
and he's very humble.
That's how I see him.
Yeah.
That's how I see him. I think he is just the most magnificent, not just specimen of a footballer. He's been a great leader down through the years for that club, and he stayed with the club too when he probably could have gone elsewhere.
Yeah, dead right. I saw him on TV during the week, actually, Adam Goods myself, and he absolutely just strikes you as a really genuine bloke and just a terrific ambassador for the sport. So, no doubt he'll still be there to help him along the way with that. One other thing before we look to the on-field stuff, Kurt Tippett has landed a coaching gig for his time. He'll be out for 11 weeks on his suspension, of course, but he's going to be helping out Paul Roos at the Swans Academy, coaching the under-16s, and the under-18s will keep him occupied during that first half of the season.
Yeah, and I think he got an injury through. I think he's broke his finger or something during the course of this. So, it's probably great that he's getting all these things out of the road while he's suspended. But look, he'll be a great ambassador because, especially in the fact that he did come from very little football when he joined us. So he can be expressing to the young kids that you don't have to be living and eating a football at 6 or 7 years of age, that you can actually pick it up and you can progress pretty quickly. No doubt something like Karen Jack would have done.
Dead right, mate. A couple more minutes, we'll move on to your top 8 predictions, but what do you make of the Swans on the field this year?
Well, conversely to the Hawthorn side, they have recruited very heavily in the way of their youth, which is really saying to me that, okay, they've probably got a bit of an ageing list. So, the Jared McVeys are starting to get to the end of their football careers. And so, and obviously Adam Goods. So these sort of blokes are going to be starting to move out. So what they're going to do here is obviously start revamping it and getting some fresh legs in there, which is really important. So they're really succession planning really well. It's going to be interesting to see how Karen Jack does actually cope with the co-captaincy. That pressure is always there, so that's really important. I think you're going to get a breakaway year for Lewis Jetta. He's just got real genuine leg speed. They play to his assets. So that's going to be really... How long do we keep Jude Bolton in the side for too? Is he going to be too old? He's starting to age, but he deserves another right to go around. One bloke to probably look out for and to see how he will progress is a young guy called Tom Mitchell. I think it's his second year on the list. He's through the father-son rule and Barry Mitchell's son. There's really big talk about him, so that'll be interesting to see how he goes. But look, their side's balanced. They've got the tools when they need the tool. They've got... probably lack a genuine goal-kicking forward, which Kurt Tippett could bring to the party. So that's going to be interesting.
Absolutely right. We've only got 5 minutes left here on SportzScene. Kevin Braysher, Darren Madigan, Craig Crowley, Ethan James, all with you. To fill up the last 5 minutes of the show, Mr. Craig Crowley, we're going to go through our top 8. I won't ask you where the Swans will finish just yet, because I know they'll be in your 8 there somewhere. Here we go. But let's go through it. We'll start with 9th place, just for you, Darren.
It's a given, isn't it? Look... I sat down here, Darren. I'm really sorry to do this, but looking through the sides, I eliminated the teams I don't think could make it. I think Richmond will be there or thereabouts, but I think they'll be just pushed out at the end because I think it's in their mind now. I really do. I think it's an even money bet that they'll finish 9th. So I think we'll lock them in there. So the only thing we can hope for, Darren, is that we get another 2 sides in our competition and we end up with a final 10, and they might be some sort of a chance. But I can't see him at this stage. In saying that, I will go from 8th up to number 1. I just think after their win last night and what they've got on board and how they're progressing, I think you'll find Brisbane will make the 8th. That'll be very, very good. I think after that 7th, I'm looking at Geelong. I think they've still got enough old heads in there to get them through and win the games they need to win. This is going to be interesting, the next 2, either Adelaide or Fremantle. They were sort of thereabouts and they were really expected to go high last year, and they probably didn't meet expectations. Adelaide started really well but fell away last year, but I still reckon they've got enough players in their group to either finish in the 5th or 6th position. All right, that takes us to our top 4, and this... And I really believe they are probably 2 or 3 games better than the rest of the field. I think in 4th, I think injury management is going to be the big thing with this side, and West Coast, Lacroix coming back. Here we go, Lacroix.
There it is.
I think Nat Nui, when he gets up and going, I think they're really being cautious with him. He'll be an asset. I just think the whole list is really good and they're going in the right direction. 3rd, I reckon Hawthorn. Okay, they're still hurting a little bit. I've got concerns over their big blokes and have they got enough running players? So I'll put them 3rd. Sydney. Look, the biggest thing and why I didn't probably put them on top, I really reckon it's hard to go and play back-to-back grand final or victories. Exceptionally hard. But the inclusion of Kurt Tippett might be the thing that they've really been looking for. So hopefully Kurt does well there. And this is probably going to break my heart to say this one, but the way they've recruited off-season, they've changed their style of play under the coach. I just reckon Collingwood... No! Oh, no, it hurts. But I just reckon they're the best side in the competition. They've got youth, they've got midfield, they've got now height, they've got everything going in their right direction. They've got a great game plan. He's starting to come of age, Buckley as a coach. They're a bit more aggressive when it comes to their style of play, and I just reckon Collingwood would be my tip to be premiers 2013.
That's going to be my next question. I've got 3 more questions with it. We got who's the premiers, Collingwood.
Yep.
Who wins the Brownlow and who gets the spoon?
Oh, well, I reckon Port Adelaide will definitely be wooden spooners. I just don't think I reckon the other sides have got more. Mm-hmm. So I reckon, the GWS and Suns will go past them, which I don't like to say, but because Port Adelaide have always been a strong side in Sandford. Brownlow medalist. Geez, that's a hard one at this stage, not to see any players playing. But, you look at Gary Ablett still on top of his game. Put it this way, if Suns can progress up the ladder, you'll probably see Gary Ablett more significant in the Brownlow. Mm-hmm. He polled votes last year when they lost dramatically, so if he can get some wins, he'll be at the top of that tree. So it really depends on them. So I reckon Gary Ablett's probably your best choice at this stage.
That's it. We'll post all of those predictions up on the SportzScene Facebook page a little later on, so there is some history for it. Darren, we've only got 35 seconds left in the show. Quickly, Premiers, Spoon and Brownlow.
All right, West Coast Eagles, Greater Western Sydney, and, Brownlow, you're talking people like Gary Ablett and that sort of stuff, as Craig's mentioned. I can't go past them at this stage of the year.
That's it. Thanks heaps, guys. We're out of time here on SportzScene. Ethan and I both did top 8s for the NRL as well. That's also on our SportzScene Facebook. Just quickly, we both came up with the same Premier Spoon and Dally M. It was Jonathan Thurston. We went Eels with the spoon, but it's looking ridiculous now, but we both tipped the Cowboys to win. Going to the news now. Thanks very much for listening. We'll be back same time next week. Thanks again.